Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining our October Stay Connected webinar. We're really excited this month to have two special guests, Mariela Resendez Alvarado with Nebraska Department of Education, who is leading the full service community school work for NDE, and her collaborator at Nebraska Children's and Families Foundation, Joe D. Costanzo, and they'll tell you a little bit more about their work, and I'll share a lot of information about full service community schools. This is a follow-up from our September 10 Nebraska Talk session, half-day session that we held. And due to a lot of interest in the topic, we decided to follow up and share some relevant information that will be helpful for you as you think about implementing this in your schools and after-school programs. So I will let you two take it away. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, and thanks for joining us, everybody. Mariela and I are going to tag team this presentation. You'll see quite early and clearly that Mariela is the superstar. I'm just trying to help out. But at any point in time, if you're going to have questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We're going to try to monitor that to get those addressed as timely as possible. So we're not like, oh yeah, 5 minutes ago we talked about this. And so we'll do our best on that front. In addition, I know it might be scheduled for an hour, but we did leave plenty of time for Q&A to kind of build that in. So if it goes till 12, great. But my guess is it might end just a little bit early, if that's okay with you guys. Okay, let me work on getting the screen shared here, and I might need some thumbs up to make sure that everybody can see it. So it should say stay connected. Okay, brown screen, perfect, or gray. Mariela, you want to have any opening words here to get started as we present?
Well, thank you again, everyone, for joining us on this follow-up to our conversation that we had a few weeks back about full-service community schools. As Kim said, my name is Mariela Resendez Alvarado. I work at the Department of Education and have been spearheading the efforts of full-service community schools and the way that we can elevate the support that could be available for students, families, and communities using this full-service community school or a community school model as we move forward after this pandemic. And again, looking at how we can emphasize the importance of collaboration and partnership when it comes to education and looking at the whole child as a way of support for families moving forward.
Yep, and I'll, sorry, I didn't properly introduce myself. I'm Joe D. Costanzo, Assistant Vice President of Education and Careers at Nebraska Children and Families Foundation. I have a privilege to partner with Mariela and NDE on this work. As we talk about this, there's no one way to do it. Whatever works best for you and your community, and just thinking about what works best for you, that's great. As long as we're kind of thinking about that as a whole, we don't want you walking away feeling like there's one way that you have to do it.
And that puts us right at what we wanted to share with you today is that, again, this is a process. A full service community school is not a plug and play. This is really looking at a process that you would take in to coordinate the services that your families, your students might need. And this is a process you could do in both urban and in rural areas. We know that there's many resources available on one side of the state that may not be available on the other. So again, looking at your process, looking at how you can integrate and collaborate with the partners that you do have or that you would like to have to be able to fully support the ongoing efforts of your school and the wraparound services that would be available based on, again, the needs and the resources that you have available. We know it's a large state, and so there is a lot of open space for programming that could happen, but it looks very different in each part of our community. So it's very important that we look at doing a look around of what is in your community, what are some of the needs that your families may have so that you can tailor your process to that specific need. And again, rural communities, you're probably wondering, well, how do I partner with people to do this if I have no one? Well, really looking at some of the stuff that happens at a full service community school may already be happening in your school, may already be a resource that you are bringing into your school. It could be dental services, it could be mental health services that you're offering. There's already things that you are doing that are part of a community school model that will help you then moving forward to provide those services then to your students.
Yeah, and as Mariella had said, we want to be very clear that a lot of this work is already happening. Community schools approach is really a process about how you partner to make the resources systematically available to all your students. And it could potentially be ways in which you're trying to fill a need, but then it could also be ways in which you are already filling a need for most of your students. But then how do we finish that last leg of the relay and make sure all of our students have easy access to this, to the opportunities and supports. Some of the things that we're going to show you and talk about have been in place for a long period of time. And what makes a lot of them successful is this sort of idea around continual reflection about how we can support our kids in schools and outside of schools as well, in partnership between the school districts and the communities themselves.
So these are some of the conditions for success that other community schools in the country have been able to work around, and it is at the NDA, as we like to say, we like to think of triangles, and the support that we are providing to families in a full service community school model fits perfectly into that multi-tiered system of support. We want to know, what are we able to provide for all of our students that, you know, it could be extended learning opportunities that are available to them, meaningful enrichment opportunities that are there, that coordinated support that's already being offered in the school day with that instruction material that is high quality and adapted to the cultural needs of the school, how that is then extended into the after school opportunities that are available. And then that service of support. How are we engaging with families? How are we integrating the support that is needed from the child, the family, and the community? And so then that comes back to this developmental triangle of support. So we are looking at all of those integrated services that could be available, again, to all students, to some students and families that may need additional support, and then to the few that we all know also need that support. And so how are we making sure that we are sustaining that and providing a whole child framework around the services that are provided to our schools? The other big part with this is that shared leadership. It is so important to make sure that you have at each one of these points, that you have point people available to help create that multi-tiered system of support. It could be school counselors, it could be before and after school providers, it could be your school social worker. There's many people, administrators, parents. As we all know, parents are the first teachers. And so making sure that they have a voice then when you're looking at success, because the success that they may have for their child is different than the school may have. And so how can we collaborate and bring their voices in as well, so that we are mindful of that and create that meaningful partnership with them.
Before we go into some of the examples and resources, I did just want to stop and see if there are any questions in the chat, or if anybody wants to sort of raise your hand or please speak up if there's some clarity or some further explanation or a general question that you might have at the moment.
Joe, I don't see any questions in the chat, but people could feel free to unmute themselves and ask directly.
And that's okay. So as a former teacher, sometimes I'm like, well, either we are explaining this really well or we're explaining it so bad nobody's got any better. So we're probably somewhere in the middle there, and that's fine. Again, at any point in time, hop in, and a lot of this is kind of review if you've seen some of our previous stuff. So we just kind of want to start with a framework for everybody to be on the same page when it comes to that. So here, these next two slides, and Kim, correct me if I'm wrong, they'll get a copy of this, and these are all hyperlinked here, of some local and some national efforts at community school partnerships. Again, it's not plug and play, so they're going to be kind of varied by resource, location, need, as you look through some of these. Locally, the Lincoln Public Schools has got a pretty robust community learning center model that is thoughtful and focusing on some of those extended learning time and after school opportunities. And that's wonderful. And we're going to applaud them for that. And if you're at the September 10th, you got a chance to hear from some great people who are doing some great work. That's great. Like, don't feel like you have to do everything for everybody all the time when you're doing this. It's a thought process kind of around partnership and figuring out where communities and schools feel like they can partner together. This is an Ed Week article that does talk about how systematically supporting on attendance initiatives, on creating a navigator in their school, on extended learning times and opportunities help close achievement gaps that schools sometimes are asked to address alone. But like we said earlier, we know schools can't do it alone. Communities, particularly coming out of the pandemic, are just as anxious, if not more so, to partner with schools to help support kids. City Connects is a program or a model that is out of Boston University that has a ton of resources for you. And again, don't feel like you have to take it all and plug and play. If you're looking through there and there's some things that they're doing that you like, take what works, take what fits for yourself. The Community Schools has a playbook. If you're interested in policy, we threw that up there. The Sun Community Schools, our great consultant Leanne has championed their work. There's a link to some frequently asked questions around community schools and full service community schools. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this student success planning. So like, we're talking this big theory, we're talking about these partnerships, but once that's settled, like, how do you do the work? The Education Redesign Lab has put out a bunch of different resources on governance structure, on funding sustainability, on how do we actually implement this work, which they call success planning, which every student in the district or in the school has a champion, has a plan, and has those connections to ensure those resources are met. So they have some great webinars, they got some great resources. Again, don't feel like you have to do it all, but plug and play, not necessarily a one-for-one model, but with what works for you. And I'm going to be showing a visual from there a little bit later to help kind of explain this concept a little bit, but we'll get to that point when we get there. Mariella did a great job of adding in a couple other examples here that she's going to talk about now.
So one that's a little bit closer to us is North Dakota. So North Dakota has, through partnerships that they have through a collaborative consortium, I should say, they have been able to work on full service community schools. They have championed the efforts that, again, schools have already started to do when they looks at the wraparound services. And so they have started then implementing some policies and procedures that their districts are then taking on to better support the effort of a community school model. And so I put that one in there. The other one, again, as you're looking at the structure of your, the components that you want to incorporate, the scaling up a school and community school partnership also has great strategies. And then we also included the 4 pillars of community schools and what they look like. So on the next slide, I can talk a little bit more about that. So again, moving forward, so you're hearing about full service community schools. Now what? You're interested in it, you want to do something because you see that there is a need. Our big emphasis has been to identify then a leadership team. Identify who in your community are those movers and shakers, who are the stakeholders in your community that can help to help with this work, because it can't be done alone. The other aspect that we have on that is making sure that you have a school community coordinator or a person that will be the one spearheading all of this work, because it is going to be very important that they collaborate not only with community partners, but again with the school. This is the joint undertaking. And so you have to have that strong leadership available and ready then to start doing some of the work. The next step that we see as crucial to all of this work is identifying what your school community program goals are, identifying what the needs are, both in the school, from families, from students, from school staff, and then also from that specific community. Because as we said, every community is very different. And so one may have a need that another does not have. And so identifying what those needs are very important. When identifying those goals, we really want you to focus on that integrated student support. What is available to students both during the day and then that extended learning time and opportunities after school? What's available to students? What's available to families? And so engaging that active family and community engagement piece are also crucial when you're identifying those needs, because they're going to be very different, and each of them are going to take different partners then that will be able to come in and provide some of that. So I think of extended learning opportunities. It could be you connecting with the extension, UNL extension office that operates across the state in providing those services after school. I think of all the fun things that unfortunately we don't always get to do in school anymore. So that hands-on exploratory learning can really be an area that a lot of us in the education system would love to see for students to be engaged and to learn in a different setting. With that, so then in order to figure out what your program goals are, you do need to do a map, a map assessment of your resources and making sure then that you're analyzing what are your strengths, what are you already working on that is working, or what are some areas that you see a gap in service based again on your integrated student support, your extended learning, and your family and community engagement. Knowing those will help you then to develop that process. What are you going to be doing moving forward? So again, with that leadership team, looking at your gaps and looking at what next steps would be. Who are you going to bring to the table? Who can actually do some of this work? I'll use again the example of working with extension services and partnering with them so that you can provide some of those services after school. With family engagement, I think of the many things that, for example, the 21st Century Community Learning Centers do to engage families, to educate families on what new reading material students are learning, or what math support they could offer them at home to engage their student. And so again, looking at where your gaps are and who's going to be able to help with that. And then with the next step, we're not quite ready to release some of this information, but we have a need assessment that the Department of Education is currently working on as an example and as a resource to you all to be able to use as you're looking at the different gaps, or again, the different programming needs that your school may have, and how to identify those needs, and then again, create the plan so that you can move out and get some of these action plans going. So again, looking at re-engaging those partners based on your gaps, or starting new partnerships as you're looking at how to better deliver services that are of need.
Yeah, so this is sorry. See, I knew Mariella, you shouldn't have given me the controls of this. I knew I was gonna have a tough time with it. This is just kind of a visual to help kind of think about, well, what does this community schools process look like? It's identifying academic supports, health and social services, enrichment activities. And for the purposes of this visual, and Mariella mentioned it earlier, if you're resource rich enough to be able to provide a community school coordinator, it might be that person. I've seen examples where a school has assigned everybody from the custodian and a bus driver and a teacher, a small set of kids to be able to connect with. And then those adults can then relay it to the administration to connect supports. If you're going to do that, of course, be mindful of contracts and time and all that sort of stuff. But there are some different creative ways to connect these services to kids should this be a direction you guys want to go, depending on resources available. And some communities and some districts are doing success planning, whether at a digital format, a piece of paper, to help each young person and family kind of identify those strengths and potential needs as well. But the idea is really to seamlessly work to have good referral and access to these types of opportunities so the kid can take advantage of the opportunities that are in front of them. Questions before we move on? Okay, all right. So where do community organizations fit? And I'm gonna kind of put on my old high school administrator lens and the fact that oftentimes high school principals, assistant principals, deans have 100 things going on, and we know we want to partner, we want to make an effort to partner, but it sometimes seems tough to move the football down the field a little bit unless the community organization or even the school has clear sort of, as Mariella mentioned earlier, needs and asks, and also for community organizations perspective, like, well, how would we like to support you? If community organizations come in and say, we're here to help school, how can we help you? If the school hadn't had a chance to think about that yet, you're probably going to get, well, we can use a financial donation, which is great, but there's more to it than that. So schools need to have sort of a clear ask from community organizations around what they need. Conversely, community organizations, it's helpful for the school if you're able to say, how can we best connect your students to X service that we're trying to provide? Whether it's extended learning time, mental behavioral health, access to food, whatever. So specifically being thoughtful about what you can provide or what you need from the school. So again, those academic, social, emotional, financial supports. Additionally, being clear about what you want this partnership to look like. Is this a one-time thing? Is this a, let's do a family night, we're willing to sponsor it, we're willing to provide the food, we're willing to provide the resources? Awesome, that's great. Or is this an ongoing thing where once a month the dental office is going to be able to come in and do assessment on kids who have permission slips signed or whatever? So again, being real specific about the need and how you might want to address, or what you can bring to the table specifically, rather than just a broad-based offer to support. So the football will be moved down the field quicker, the more specific you can get from a school side and from a community org side. Lastly, thinking about the best entry point. Again, this is going to be super specific and unique for each school and each district, depending on the resources and roles assigned. For some schools, particularly elementary schools, it might be the principal. At high schools, middle schools, it might be an AP. It might be a school community coordinator if they have one. For some districts, it might be the district office that's best positioned to help make these connections. And at other school districts, it might be a parent or a PTA or a booster organization. So it doesn't always have to be right to the principal, but that might not be a bad spot to start. And don't feel put off if they say, well, so-and-so is leading this effort. Be able to connect with them, have specific asks as you're looking to partner. Those are the types of things that are going to help kind of move this process along a little bit quicker for you as a community organization or for you at a school. Mariella, did I miss anything? I know you did a great job in talking through what you would like, but if there's anything that we missed, let us know. And obviously we're going to kind of open up the floor for some Q&A here.
Joe, you did wonderful as well.
Thanks.
I would say the one big thing that I want to make sure, again, so many of you that work in a school building know the work that's already happening in your buildings, and you may not be calling it or calling yourselves a community school or a full service community school. I think we had a discussion earlier as well about, okay, well, if it says full service, like, do we have to do all of these things that fit into a full service community school model? No, you really do need to see what your needs are and then look to see who you can partner. And it is a partnership. It's strengthening those relationships with some of your school staff or your families that may be able to provide some of these extended learning opportunities, or may have some funding that they know of through their businesses or through their workplaces that can, again, come in and help support the work and efforts that you see as needs in your school. And so looking at the school as that hub of services to your families and to the students, it's going to look very different for each and every one of you, based again on the families that you are working with and the students that are attending your schools.
We did have a few questions dropped in the chat. And so Allison, thank you. Multiple parts here. I'll kind of do my best, but obviously fill in if I didn't answer one of them specifically. So Allison did ask, how do you overcome old frames of thinking about the relationship between schools and community? Great question. I am going to probably maybe go out on a limb and suggest, as a whole, nationally, locally, schools have maybe not been exposed to the highest quality policies and practices for student and family engagement. And same thing with families and communities. They maybe haven't been engaged in a way that is meaningful, dual capacity, ultra respectful of funds of knowledge from both the school and from the community perspective. So that as a framework to start, COVID has really accelerated sort of the transparency. Schools have been kind of forced to feel a lot more transparent about what goes on in classrooms. So my hope is that coming out of the pandemic, they will feel just as comfortable shifting the frame from old narratives. But then also, I would also suggest, like, the specificity of an ask is going to help narrow in the possible solution, to help kind of change the idea of, well, parents and community members, their job is to raise money, to have a big sale, this, that, or the other. So the school having an intentional ask from families and communities, and also the communities and families maybe providing something specific or having a specific ask, is one way. Again, it's not one size fits all, to come up with and kind of bridge that, like, new frame of thinking. Mariella, is there anything you'd like to add on that?
No, I think, again, looking at it as it's going to be a change. It is a change, and it does take time. It's not going to happen overnight. And so you need to have a strong vision and mission to be able to start making some of those structural changes, I would say, in the way that schools operate day to day. And again, how you are looking at meeting basic needs, which I think, again, with the pandemic, has definitely been in the forefront for many of us. And so looking at it, that it's going to take time, but slowly and surely, it'll be what the work that you put into it will pay off.
Second part of Allison's question, what is the relationship of this type of process to the traditional types of social support and redistribution of policies? I may have some follow-up questions, or please have some follow-up questions if we don't answer for some of the specificities on that. Like, when I start thinking about schools having a specific academic function and also a social emotional component around, readiness to participate in a democracy, socialization, all those sorts of things, I think those traditionally are always going to stay. Over the course of time, this process of asking the schools to do more and more is going to take that same sort of time to unwind. So the frame of traditional social supports, I'm thinking around, over the last 20 years, where there have been maybe health centers in schools and those sorts of things, which is great. That's a great embedded partnership, but not everybody's got those resources. So how can we make that connection in a way that doesn't require us to build a clinic? And in my frame, Allison, so if I'm thinking about this wrong, please let me know. Like, that in my mind is like that sort of traditional social support in a school. This is now sort of like, okay, not everything has to be based in the school. These social supports don't always have to be in the school. The therapy session for behavioral mental health doesn't have to be in the guidance counselor's office with a trained professional. It could be out in the community. It could be in a different location and time that might work best and be more comforting or feel more comfortable for families. So I'm not sure if I addressed it completely, Allison, and I'm sorry if I kind of read or misinterpreted that. Mariella, any thoughts to add there?
No, I would have the same. I think we just need a little bit more clarification on, or I would.
Yeah, and that's okay. Yeah, so I'm sorry if I kind of misinterpreted the question there.
Yeah,
Mariella,
no, I don't think you misinterpreted it. What I'm getting at and what I'm thinking about is how these processes are really going to change like communities as we know it, and change the traditional borders around the family, and change the different sectors and what different sectors in our cities are responsible for. So my question about policy and traditional social safety net has to do with like SNAP benefits. So if the city or the state are providing people with food who need nutritional assistance, how does what the school is going to do, like how is it different? And are they overlapping? Are they supporting each other? Food's probably easy because there's probably a lot of communication because of kids who get free lunch, and that's connected to SNAP in Nebraska already. But it's just fascinating to think about how this is really going to redefine traditional roles. And there are some families that are very protective of how their kids are raised. And I'm just wondering how difficult it is to kind of maneuver these ideas around those more solid, traditional, this is the border around my family kind of situations.
Mariella, I'm going to take some note. I got some points I want to make. I'm just taking note to make sure I grab onto them.
I think
Mariella?
one of the biggest things that what I'm hearing then is, yes, it is going to change. If services are being delivered in a school building, and traditionally, you know, families might go to a food bank or a local church. I think it again comes back to the communication, the shared vision, and getting that communication out to families that this is a resource. You may not need it today. That's okay. But this is a resource that's available because we've noticed that this is a need. And then communicating with those partners. I think of one community that recently was talking about getting dental services into their schools. They partnered with a local dentist in their community to be able to do that. And it took time and effort to get that done. And families were very thankful that they were having their children being looked at by a dentist to make sure everything was good. So that again, when they're in the classroom, they're not, you know, with a toothache or not coming to school because they're in so much pain. It is going to be a shift, and it has to come with, again, the collaboration and the shared leadership that there is between the community and the school. And then sharing that communication then out to families and to community to let them know this is different. This isn't how we've always operated. And it's important for us then to collaborate and to bring these health resources, to bring these nutrition or physical activity or learning that can happen because it's a need. Again, not to all families, but we're looking at what can we bring in that will help the majority.
So Allison, as far as how is this different, I think in my mind, the difference is really it's an access point as the school through the kids, rather than potentially trying to go straight to the parent. I mean, and not like through the kids and, so, you know, like go around the parent, but if a parent feels comfortable saying, yes, boy, that's actually going to be great because I don't got to take off work and my kid can see the dentist during the school day. Like that access point is how this, in my mind, is different. It can be a really solid paradigm shift to connect the kids to the resources. And depending on what the partnership might look like, maybe they'll serve the parent of the kid as well at the school base, you know, whatever. Okay, but again, it's very locality dependent on that front. It might also overlap. It might be, and again, to your example on the food, and we can use whatever service we would like. Yeah, it might be, we're gonna hold, you know, a distribution at the local church at 7 o'clock at night. But then that day, actually, we're gonna have kids get the opportunity to take it home first, right? Or you know, so it's it's another opportunity. It's another access point that might make it easier and more conducive to families' lifestyles and needs and competing priorities around a variety of different things. And it might not, I would suggest if you're going to do the food drive at night and you're going to do it during the day, keep them both, if you got the capacity to do it. It shouldn't necessarily supplant. And to your point, also, Allison, around the family that says the boundary is here. I think that that's completely legitimate and we're not going to change that. And maybe we shouldn't try to change that. And that's okay too. However, it is there as an opportunity should the family want to take it. So there's that paradigm on there as well. Every family is going to have individual comfort levels with the boundaries. As kind of mentioned earlier, whether the therapy session takes place at the school or if it's the voucher to do it at the clinic or the office or whatever access point after school or on the weekend, great. But I think we could all probably agree if the family would like the child to receive mental health services, they should have that opportunity to do so, whether in the school or outside of the school. And that should be as easy to access for the family and the kid as possible. Or telehealth, thanks, Anne, as that an option too. So again, it's just trying to find those access points to make it, to help provide that opportunity as seamlessly as possible. And the third thing I wanted to mention around policy is at the end of the day, policies aren't going to change unless the citizens are directing the politicians to change it. And whether it comes from SNAP or TANF, and that's a big national sort of process, yes, for sure. I do want to at least mention there are some examples of where some starter funds, a grant was implemented to do some types of processes and provide some services in a different way. That once the grant ran out, local communities organized together to create maybe a new tax base to ensure that service can continue. The Children's Funding Project has done some great research on local dedicated streams of funding. So places that maybe we sometimes don't think of being super eager to tax themselves when they know the service, when they see the value, and they would like to keep it. That long term is how policies can get shaped or changed by this in that specific example that I'm speaking of. So that's, I hope, was able to facilitate or further some thinking around some of the questions that you so artfully put to us. So thank you for those.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
I would like to mention, there was a question there about does this fit in alternative school or alternative type of programs? I think absolutely this community partnership model, I might argue, is maybe more necessary, more connections with employers at the teenage, older youth level for those alternative programs that are high quality supplements to the academic process, making those connections about the in-class with what this might be for a career. There are specific needs that alternative kids and their families have as well. Again, maybe sometimes more so than your traditional path. So I really appreciate that thought process around not just thinking about your traditional K-12 sort of institutions, but then your alternative programs as well. So thank you so much for that question. Mariella, question, how does mental health support for schools differ in this scenario?
So one of the big things when I first came to the department, I was working around the area of mental health services and getting them into schools. And so this one was very close to me because I worked in a Title I building, a community school, that had a therapist that came in, and it was part of an agency, which was my lead agency at the time, that provided the staffing then for us to be able to have a therapist who came in and provided therapy service at the school. Now, again, that was a partnership. It was a very strong partnership where we made sure that we had funding available. So both using some federal funding that we had, using agency funding, school Title I points, and using some of our family and community engagement funding for that as well, to be able to house this person twice a week in the building. And so again, when I came to the department, I was like, oh yes, bringing a therapist into the building, that's part of a full service community school model. That's an approach to get the services right there to the students as needed. And again, as part of that collaboration with, again, an agency with the school to look to make sure that there was space available for that therapist, to make sure that they were meeting the kids that had the highest needs. And so making sure that that was being brought up as the work that goes around with a full service approach of providing what is needed in the school. And again, bringing in those partners that can help you deliver the services.
I was the one who asked that question, so thank you very much for that answer. I think further on, when I think the point of funding is what gets in the way of those relationships within our buildings and our school districts. And I also know that there are very few people who have access to that information within those districts. And sometimes that's not trickled down to our leadership in our buildings. And I don't know if that's something that we've considered of how we're going to continue to get that message into our neediest schools to say this is out there. Not just one person in your district knows this is out here, but because we are a community school, there is a liaison or someone that's available to help you build these partnerships with. I would love people within your immediate community, not just someone who lives, let's say, in this particular district, but someone who's down the street from your school, from your building, that can help supply those to you, because then you have that, again, community engagement. And so I don't know what that looks like if there is a lack of funding or if there is a lack of bodies to even follow through with that.
Yeah, I think that you're spot on a lot of that. That's why I think the community school coordinator and their role is super vital. But again, that's personnel, that's funding, to your point. Some schools do it differently, as they might spread it through, multiple people. Mariella might agree or disagree with me on the point that it's great to have one person, because if it's one person's job to think about that, instead of 10 people's part of 10 people's jobs, it's more likely to be coordinated and successful. So funding is an issue. Knowledge sometimes can be a barrier, an issue. Human capacity to deliver the services is absolutely, at times, particularly depending on where you're at in the state, a real sort of crisis point on some of this. And third, I would say, particularly as we start maybe thinking about success planning and implementation, it is types of data sharing. Who can receive what information when it comes to health or educational information, and how you work through that is going to be really important too. Obviously, respecting all the laws, ultra important. I'm never suggesting anybody not, but it would be nice if a team can sit down and say, Joe has got, his grades aren't doing so hot. He's expressed some need for some mental health. He needs something to do after school. And if you got the team or the coordinator who has that information and connect those services, that is obviously the most ideal, but it's super hard to get to, and it is a process for sure. And resources in terms of capacity and funding and all of that, and local needs and all of that plays in. So that's why it's super helpful to kind of think about your own community context as you consider implementation or the idea.
And one more question, have we worked with anyone, from the state on that MTSS process? Because a lot of our buildings use the MTSS process to identify our students who do have those needs. So that's a great partnership for buildings to have that liaison come or be invited by a building to say, we have a problem solving meeting coming up about this student, this student, this student. But the number one thing that's getting in the way is some behavioral disruptions or behavioral disorder or some mental health issues. And then we have a liaison to say, here are some options for you. Here are some things for mom. Here's a way that you can talk to mom about these things. Those are the kind of in practice things that I think a lot of schools know that there's an issue. They just don't know how to solve it. They don't have the resources to solve it.
Correct. And that's where, again, that one person that would be able then to be that liaison who would be sitting in on these team meetings or these MTSS meetings that would be available to say, oh, yes, or actually, I know a little bit more. Here's what the family had shared previously to all of this. So here's the resources that we have available from those community partners. I'll just say with the 4 demonstration sites that we're currently working and implementing a full service community school approach, they collaborate with the community collaboratives that are part of Nebraska's work around support services and to be that point of resource sharing. And so that's one approach that we're taking on this, is connecting those dots to make sure then that somebody is at the table and is part of that leadership team and has that connection with the community. You said it very well, Angela. It does have to come from the community for families to feel secure, to feel that relationship. Same thing then in the building. When teachers know I have one person that I can go to and let them know, I'm seeing the student and I'm noticing something. How can we get them support, or how can we make sure that there is resources available? So again, it comes back to that one person that is the contact, both for the community and for the school, and that has built that relationship and that connection. So then the support is available to them.
And I'd like to highlight the relationship piece for sure, not only with the community school coordinator, with the collabs and the existing resources, but it's oftentimes been mentioned multiple times as we're looking to help be a full service to our young people. There's an existing adult with a good relationship that they feel comfortable expressing that need. So this isn't trying to take all of that stuff off a teacher's plate. Those relationships are central. Student to teacher, student to admin, student to potentially school coordinator, families and their central role in this, and being honest and open and transparent about being a supporter, being there if need be, but that relationship piece is so key.
I don't see any more questions, but please. I was going to say, otherwise you can have like 12 minutes back in your day.
And I'm going to put my email address in the chat here. I'm happy to connect and discuss further, and whether you're one of our 4 demonstration sites or not. It's so community specific. I know there's a lot of maybe things going through your head that you maybe want to talk through further around ideas or examples or processes. I definitely am not going to have all the answers, but I'm super passionate about this stuff. So I'm happy to help in any way that I might be able to be helpful. And the slides for today, I believe, will be sent out. Kim, correct me if I'm wrong, a little bit later. We should have the hyperlinks to the resources and examples.
We can post your PowerPoint with the links along with this recording on the Stay Connected site, if that is okay with you. And then anybody can access it.
Thank you. Yes.
And I could go ahead and have Joe and Mariella's email addresses in that same place.
Yes, that'd be great.
Well, this was really helpful information. Thank you so much for sharing your latest thinking and your project with all of us as we consider ways to determine where we are in this process and how to move forward to make sure we're meeting the needs of our students and our families, and with the help of the community and all working together. So thank you to everybody who joined today as well. We really appreciate your time, and our next Stay Connected webinar will be at noon on October 4th. So we hope you will join us. Let us know. Yeah, great job. Thanks for your presentation, Joe and Mariella, and thanks to all of you as well.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.